Joining us today in this episode from a new housing development in Cambridge is Jennifer Palmer, General Manager of the Brian Perry and Bridge Housing Charitable Trusts. For more information on this episode, follow the links in the episode notes.
Well, Jen, hey, thanks so much for having us here today. Really good to talk with you. So you're here representing the Bridge Charitable Housing Trust. Is that the right way around?
Bridge Housing Charitable Trust.
The Bridge Housing Charitable Trust, thanks. And I'm really interested to dive into some of the services that you offer, because my understanding is that you've got a range of different products and services that you offer to people who are trying to get into home ownership. Is that right?
That's right. So I guess in terms of the programs, we started with a secure home program, which is essentially a leasehold product. This particular version was originated in Queenstown by Julie and her amazing team. So in short, the household comes and they buy the house, but not the land. So it really removes the land cost from that initial purchase price, meaning they're buying at about, half the price. So we've been able to sell 2-bedroom homes in Cambridge for around the $330K.
So we're here in a beautiful, brand new 2-bedroom home. What would the price be for someone to own this home?
So under the secure home program, $330,000.
Right. Yeah. That's a much better number than almost anywhere in the country.
It really is. So with that program, they pay a nominal ground rent, and then I guess the unique part, which we think is great, is that if the family decide to move on, and of course they don't, they could stay in the home forever. They have a 100-year lease, which, mind you, starts again if they do sell. So the new family would come in with, again, a 100-year lease. But if they do decide to sell, they sell it back to the trust. We commit to purchasing it back. They get their original purchase price plus inflation. So for us, that means that the home retains affordability forever. And so the next family on the wait list can come and enjoy that sort of affordable price as well. The household that's left, while they haven't had the big capital gains, they've done so much better than if they've been renting. They've been paying off their own mortgage and building equity. So it's a win-win.
Fantastic. So that's one of the programs. That's the Secure Home program. What else is the Trust doing? So
we've recently launched a shared equity program. So we're calling it First Home Partner, which it's often called. And that is a co-own situation. So the household may not have the full amount. They might have a 5% deposit, but maybe not be able to afford the full freehold. We come in and partner with them. So we may take a 20% ownership in that home. And over time, ideally by year 10, they've been able to buy at our share, and so then they're freehold owners, and they enjoy all the benefits of freehold ownership. It's just a hand up.
Brilliant. Any other programs?
We do offer freehold,
yes.
So we can sell to market, and the purpose of that is really just to subsidize the programs that we'd like to offer. Yeah. So we partner with, I guess, almost our founding trust, the Brian Perry Charitable Trust, who act as a developer in most cases. We partner with other developers as well, but they've been very generous in working with us and donating land as well, which has made these projects work.
Fantastic. Now tell me, you have some partners in terms of who's prepared to provide the finance to make this work, both for the development and for the households. I believe you're working with Westpac Bank, is that right?
Correct. Yeah, Westpac have been amazing to work with. They've been very, very supportive. So they provide the development finance for a number of our developments, and also lending to our households. So they've been on board since day one. More recently, ASB has come to the table, so they'll be a partner with our First Home Partner program. Yeah. And I should also mention Hamilton City Council. So for our development in Hamilton City Council have come to the party with a significant portion of the development finance as well.
And so I would imagine for the mainstream banks, it's innovative to offer a mortgage sort of product effectively to a family who are buying the house but not the land. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we're hoping that grows, that movement, and that more banks will move in that direction.
Absolutely. And I mean, Julie and her team in Queenstown did the groundwork on getting that across the line. And like I say, with Westpac and other banks in Queenstown as well, are early adopters and jumped on board and recognized the impact and the very, very low risk to the bank.
Talk to me about the master plan and design aspects here, because as I walked around the neighbourhood with you, it was apparent to me that you've put a lot of thought into the arrangement of the homes and how they interact with each other.
Yeah, livability is a second, after affordability, we'd say livability would be our second pillar. So we're very mindful that, the houses are quite compact, intentionally small, because of course that reduces the purchase price. Land is also small, so they're compact. We don't spend a lot of, the land on just backyards, but what we do have is a lot of communal space. So we have a large area in the front, open green space. We have some pocket parks coming with, just simple seesaws and swings and basic things like that. So people can congregate. We have some paths that are, certainly wide enough for families to walk along together. So ideally, there's that sort of community feel. People know their neighbors, but still have that privacy as they'd expect.
Can I ask you about demand and acceptance of the program? I'm aware from my experience in the community sector that we have a growing number of families, intergenerational renters. And sometimes, is it fair to say that the possibility or the option of home ownership is not even in their universe of available choices, that helping people to get to that point where they understand the difference between owning and renting is quite a hurdle? Is that fair?
It surprised us, but you're exactly right. We didn't anticipate that being a barrier. We thought we'll launch these homes available, as I say, $330,000, and we'll have lineups of people. And we sort of had lineups. We have 800 families now on our database, but there's still a reluctance, and we've now sold, we have 26 households living under that program, but it took us 2 years to get there. So there was a lot of education, a lot of reassurance. We had to build a lot of trust. We have a staff member, Carly, who's fantastic. She works with the households on a very personal level. She gets to know them and their families. There develops trust, and she really shepherds them through the process. So and holds them to account as well. So have you rung John at the bank, and have you done this? And I've told him you're going to call him on Monday. And so there's a lot of effort that goes in, and she'll often work with a family for 8 months, a year, beyond that if they have maybe a debt to pay or something like that. So it's fairly intensive work. But hopefully we're starting to, people recognize now the Bridge Housing name and have some trust in that and some confidence in what we're doing.
Tell me a little bit about the how you arrived at the programs that you did. I would imagine there's been some pretty deep research into what the current available housing stock is. Are you seeing a growth in demand, do you think, in your future, near and medium term?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting you say that. We don't know if we got it right. We sort of looked around and said, let's do something for affordable housing. What are we going to do? And we looked at models, and the first one we came across, my colleague was actually at a conference where Julie was speaking and said, how about we try that? And at the time, the government was running this PHO program. There's loans available. We managed to set ourselves up. Meanwhile, we're also building houses and registering as a charitable trust. There was a lot going on at the same time, and we just sort of, to be honest, held our breath and said, well, worst case, we're developing some houses that are, higher density, smaller, and therefore more affordable than what's typically being built. And hopefully that's going to answer some demand. And it turned out to be great. And we did the same when we adopted the First Home Partner Program, when we looked at the New Zealand Housing Foundation and the great work that they've been doing, and thought, well, we'll do that as well. So we're not reinventing the wheel. We recognize there's, a huge gap, and we keep thinking, well, look, if we build too many 2-bedrooms, there's a demand. There will be, it's impossible to build too many houses. So, and we'll just tweak what we do as we go. But the important thing is to do something.
Yeah. Yeah, I love your action orientation. I suspect, is it fair to say that if we look back into the DNA and the whakapapa of your organisation, there are some pretty action-oriented and motivated people driving the...
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, absolutely. So Bridge Housing was really born out of the Brian Perry Charitable Trust, which is led by Simon Perry, Marlene Julian, Tiffany Perry, and Georgia Perry. And they are absolutely ambitious and innovative and, purpose-driven. So when they see a gap or a need, they're not big on writing checks and walking away. It's more, what can we do? Let's get our hands dirty. Let's understand the problem. Let's put our money where our mouth is. We can donate land if that's what it takes. We'll donate resource, whatever it might take. Yeah. And also not being afraid to, as I say, take risks and fail. Yeah. So we sometimes say we're failing forward. So we're not getting everything right every time, but it's better than where we were 2 years ago, and next year will be better again. So it's been a great environment because you can take those risks and try things, and we just keep going.
Fantastic example of continuous improvement and learning by doing.
Yes.
If you were someone in another region in New Zealand looking at what's happening here, would your advice be, do you feel like you've landed on the right structure, the right capital structure? It sounds like you're using property development as a means to keep the economic engine sustainable and working. Do you feel like you're in the right spot?
I think so. I think, it's market will always have its challenges, and we certainly want the market to settle. We don't want to see house prices increase, but we do rely on freehold sales. We've relied very much on the philanthropy of the Brian Perry Trust and of the Perry family. So that's been really important, and also government programs. But I think where we are with the balance of being a charitable trust and having a number of partners, I think we're kind of in the right spot. And we're always looking. So if there's, we're always open to new programs, new ideas, working in different ways. We can be really flexible. So if a new program comes out of central government or an investor wants to do something different, really open to exploring whatever opportunities may come.
At the household level, the individual household level, can you just give a sense of the total combined gross household income bands within which you can operate with the programs?
Yeah. So probably the lowest case was a recent development. We partnered with a developer in Te Awamutu, where he's built a number of 2-bedroom homes. So we were able to partner with him to bring the leasehold, the shared equity, the secure home program. And those were selling for $292,000. So household incomes, depending, of course, on your deposit, could be as low as mid-70s for a household income. So that could be 2 people working, and to probably all the way up to about $130,000 because we're a charitable trust. There's no prescription of what that number has to be, but we're really mindful that our mandate is relief of poverty and trying to make that sort of intergenerational impact. Fantastic
to hear that you're reaching that far down the income spectrum. That's quite, it's extraordinary actually to think that you could, and in the context of that conversation around the relationship between a family or a household's income, what's your definition of affordable that you're working to?
We don't really have a definition. It's as affordable as humanly possible. So every time we work with planners or architects or lawyers or whoever it might be, that is the number one pillar. So, there won't be Juliet balconies, and there won't be this, and there won't be that. And then again, I think it would be unrealistic for us to say our point is, 5-time mean household income or 80% of, average house price. The reality is, you just need to make them as affordable as possible. Yeah. So under the leasehold, as I say, they went down to 290 something in TA. Great. I mean, we still had applicants who couldn't afford that, of course. And here we now have 4 bedrooms, which are more, under our first-time partner in the 600 range. That's completely unaffordable for a lot of people. And a lot of these matrices don't take into account the household size and, larger families and the demographics. Depending who we're working with, we'll often have large families. So the fixed price doesn't work.
Yeah, okay. Looking to the future, what do you see as the greatest opportunities and barriers that you're facing as you go about the work that you're doing?
For us, access to land. As I say, we've been really, really reliant and benefited greatly from the generosity of landowners, particularly the Brian Perry Trust, who've donated probably $10 million worth of land. That will obviously come to an end, and we'll need to find other sources of land discounted. So working with developers, councils to introduce a form of, inclusionary zoning, whatever that might look like, but working with developers to ensure that a portion of every development is affordable and genuinely affordable. So, not 10% of, reduced average house prices, but something that's meaningful. So there's lots of ways that can happen. We're finding the council's really, really great to work with. They're really mindful that, we have enough barriers. And so where they can be supportive, we found that they have been. As I said earlier, the banks have been fantastic, particularly Westpac, and have really removed obstacles in our path. So that's been great. But certainly, financial literacy, if we could have a little bit more of that, access to land, and the return of government programs. I mean, I appreciate the government's focus on social housing at the moment, absolutely acknowledge that as a priority, but there's still that middle of the continuum gap where the PHO sat really nicely. We'd love to see a return of that.
Nice. I'm going to ask about inclusionary housing, inclusionary zoning, as this is something that is an available remedy, so to speak. When I think of an organisation like yours, in an ideal world, there would be some way for you to access subsidised land or land at nil consideration to continue to fuel the machine. Have you got a view on inclusionary housing, inclusionary zoning? Because it is within, at present, it is within the available tools for local government as part of their planning instruments and such like. What are your thoughts on that?
Simply put, we absolutely support it and would love to see it introduced. We're not, we don't have a particular view of what that has to look like, but the intent of it, to, share the value uplift and to say, affordable housing is integral to our community. And so developers, you have a role to play there as well, because obviously every time they get a consent, that lifts the value of the land that they've had. So there's a benefit. And we're just saying, share the benefit. And if you do your part, great. And one of our trustees, Peter Southwick, he looks at it the opposite way. He says, if you deliver affordable housing and if you do all these great things for the community, then yes, we'll give you a consent. So that's what comes second, not first. And I like that. I think, yeah. So, the Trust Bridge Housing certainly supports that and would really encourage our councils to look at that further, or central government.
We've been looking internationally at inclusionary zoning in regions as far as and as wide as New York and London and particularly actually continental Europe, where the idea that you've positioned there is absolutely normal. That the affordable housing is prioritised in many regions and sometimes beyond 50%, just because of the need for, particularly for key workers, and sustaining our communities and allowing people to stay in place, connected to the place they work, they worship, or they live with their family or their friends, etc. So we're with you there, and strongly supportive from a community housing perspective of inclusionary. And one of the conversations we've been having with councils around the country is, would it assist you as a local government if it was centrally legislated to remove some of the burden and risk of litigation falling only on you or on your own? And generally it seems that local government seems to be quite interested in seeing a platform at a national level to support those community captured.
That's certainly my understanding as well. Yeah, I think, and it makes absolute sense, doesn't it? So,
it does. Yeah. Hey, look, some good news. In November, the end of November last year, there was a lovely launch, which I had the privilege of attending, of the Community Housing Funding Agency down in Wellington. And then even more recently, Ministers Nicola Willis and Chris Bishop stated that the government will support the Community Housing Funding Agency by way of an underwrite. It looks like what will happen as a result of that is that there will be a significant reduction in the cost of debt to new affordable housing supply. Is that going to help make your boat go further and faster?
Absolutely. As I said earlier, you're sort of pulling every lever to bring the cost down. And if we can drop the cost of finance, amazing, and we really welcome that news and think it's brilliant. It's just another thing, on the list that needs to kind of fall into place for this to happen.
As we know, however, systems change and housing systems are complex. Any views on whether there's a silver bullet or not?
There is absolutely not a silver bullet, or certainly not one we've found yet. It takes interventions from all of the parties that you've mentioned before, whether it's local government, central government, agencies like yourselves, trusts like ours, chips, whoever it might be. We all have to be doing different things, and developers certainly have a role to play. And we have to constantly be doing it. And I think the scariest thing for some organizations is they genuinely have to think differently. So if you want to be an investor, you might have to look at your side power. You might have to look at your policies. You might have to change the way you think, your expectations, that balance of social returns versus financial returns, and really appreciate that there is a cost somewhere to this. And so I think everyone has a role to play, but unfortunately, no silver bullet that I know of.
Okay, I'm pleased to hear that, because that's the theory we're working on as well, by the way. And in one sense, what we're trying to do with telling these stories is to make each player, each participant, aware of the levers they have available, and encouraging them to use those levers wherever they may sit, at the talents, the resources, etc. Yeah. We've really appreciated our visit to the Waikato region, and we've observed a significant amount of work has been done looking at the persistent unmet housing need by region, by area, and within the city. If we don't continue to address the housing affordability crisis as a matter of absolute priority, what are the possible impacts on the communities in this region if we don't really focus on fixing that?
Yeah, I mean, I understand Hamilton has one of the lowest rates of home ownership in the country. In fact, potentially the lowest rate. So we're going to be at a point where, less than 50% of people own their own homes, which may not seem like a crisis today, but the crisis is coming, and we talk about retirement. And what do you do when you retire? And there is no massive social safety net like you might see in Europe, where they often say, oh, everyone rents in Europe, it's fine. Great, but when people retire, there's just a different structure for them to rely on, lots of interfamily, intergenerational households, things like that. If we don't have that in place here, we are facing down a train wreck that's coming towards us. Where are retirees going to live? So we're really mindful that, it's great to say that, today there's rentals and people generally have housing. It's not good enough. But what we see certainly in the central area of Hamilton is a real lack of all sorts of typologies, to try to find a one-bedroom rental. Impossible. They just aren't there. I think last I heard, Lodge had about 4,000 people on their database looking for rentals, and at any given time they might have, less than 20 available. So it's dire. People will start, spreading out and not being able to afford to live, and you see those problems already very strong in, the likes of Queenstown, where their essential workers can't afford to live anywhere near the central city anymore. So, yeah, and we know the problems that result of lack of housing and the truancy rates, and kids are going and changing schools, and its health impact. And, you name it, it's no different in Hamilton, except potentially it's getting worse.
If you had a magic wand in terms of governmental policy and the near future, what are some of the improvements or changes that you might make that would help the responsiveness of the housing system?
You mentioned inclusionary housing or inclusionary zoning. I think that would probably be number one and have the greatest impact. Certainly, if you can remove the cost of land, or at least significantly reduce the cost of land, it makes everything a lot easier. The financials just like that, it changes. So for us, that's significant. The return of support for that kind of middle of the continuum, affordable housing, it's a huge gap. And without programs like the PHO, interest-free loans and things like that, it's still incredibly difficult to make it stack up. We looked at affordable rentals in Hamilton City, and with free land, with subsidies from council for interest, with at the time they had the affordable rental program, huge grants from government, and it was still almost impossible to make it work. So I keep saying to people, it's really, really hard. Everyone has to do their part.
Yeah, and would it be fair to say that affordable housing requires a subsidy?
Yes.
Yeah, and probably more than one. And so at multiple stages, if we're going to deliver that supply, we need to be looking at ways to all pull the levers we can to deliver that outcome. Yeah. Well, look, on behalf of the community housing sector. I just want to thank you and the Trust for the amazing work you do. We're really excited about your future, loving the beautiful homes that you're building, and we're sitting in one right now. And just so thanks very much for taking time to come.
And thank
talk
you
to
as
us.
well. Your organisation's been a great advocate, and we've appreciated the support. So
Thanks, Jen. Awesome.
We'd like to thank Jennifer for taking the time to speak with us today. For more information on this episode, follow the links in the episode notes. And don't forget to subscribe to the Cha Hub podcast on your favourite podcast platform.